All right, hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. I'm Thomas. I do educational material, educational videos here on this channel. And today is the 95th edition of our review of the reciprocal system of theory. And this is a theory discovered and propounded by Dewey B. Larson in the 20th century from his first inklings back around 1930 all the way until his death in 1990. And during that time, it took him about 25 years to kind of work out his theory in his head through induction until he came up with his two fundamental postulates. And then after that point, he was writing books and articles for the next 35 years. We are actually right now looking at his final book that actually came out posthumously in 1995 called Beyond Space and Time. Now, the crux of his theory is articulated in his first fundamental postulate. The basic gist of it is that the universe is not made out of matter, and it's not made out of energy, but the universe is made out of motion. And motion is the relationship between time and space. Space and time are identical to each other, except that they are reciprocals of each other. Boy, I'm having some issues with my computer here. Okay. I wanted to read to you the postulate, which was only like one sentence or two sentences, but I'll just have to summarize it here again like I normally do. Space and time are reciprocals of each other. That's hence the reciprocal system of theory. The way that 4/3 and 3/4 are reciprocals of each other. They are related in a fraction, in the same way that time over space is space over time. They're the same. They have the same qualities, except there's an inversion between them. One is the denominator of one is the numerator of the other, and vice versa. But they have the same qualities, therefore, so space being multidimensional, time is also multidimensional. Time being a phenomena that progresses or flows or is always getting later and later, so therefore space is also a phenomenon that is progressing or flowing, meaning that it's always getting further and further apart, farther away. And that is seen in the recession of the distant galaxies that was seen by the Hubble telescope way back even before Larson started this whole journey. And also, time and space are both quantized, meaning that they only come in discrete units. They're very small, microscopic, and instantaneous, basically, for the measurements of the single units of space and time, but there is no half unit or 3/10 of a unit or anything like that. And 1 unit of space in 1 unit of time is the speed of light. In Larson's system, the speed of light is the midpoint of the universe, unlike Einstein's universe where the speed of light is the maximum. The speed of light is the midpoint or the null point or the origin. And then there is half of the universe that's actually moving faster than the speed of light. Half the universe is moving slower than the speed of light. He calls those sector 2 and sector 1, respectively. Also, he calls them the cosmic sector and the material sector. So the material sector is what we're familiar with, and that's the realm of normal material atoms and molecules, and they build up by aggregation, bonding, until they get to their most complex level, DNA. And at that point, DNA becomes eligible to be controlled by a cosmic entity, an entity from sector 2. When the sector 1 and sector 2 entity come together, Larson refers to that as the life unit. And the life unit then starts from a single-celled organism, an amoeba or something like that, and a virus, and works its way up to its most complex level, which is the intelligent human being. And the intelligent human being then becomes eligible to be controlled overall by what Larson calls a Sector 3 entity. And Sector 3 is really this origin or this metaphysical region beyond physical, beyond space and time, or independent of space and time. And as I mentioned, the book that we're going through is called Beyond Space and Time. So it has to do with this metaphysical region, Sector 3. Other people might have called that God, or the gods, or the religious, or the numinous, or the spiritual. And Larson calls it Sector 3. And so Sector 3 communicates with the intelligent human through various means, such as ESP, intuition, religious revelation, scientific insight, and others. And Sector 3 communicates with us, and it is always right. It's always correct. Our ability to decode those messages, to translate those messages, is limited. And so sometimes we get it wrong. But the communication itself is correct. Sector 3 is bent on ethical behavior. It teaches us how to be good, whereas Sector 2 is directed toward survival. It teaches us how to live, how to survive. Sometimes those things work together, sometimes they don't. In times when they don't, that is where the human being steps in and has to decide through their free will which they're going to choose. Are they going to choose survival, or are they going to choose good behavior, ethical behavior? And so we are toward the end of this book, Beyond Space and Time. This is, I believe, the 73rd video that we've done on this. And we are in chapter 24, the end of chapter 23, that is called Religion Reexamined. And he's going over a conversation where he's talking about science and religion. And, you know, the basic thrust behind this work is to really turn religion into a science, to make religion a science, and through understanding how Sector 3 communicates with us. And so that's what he's going over right here, and we're going to take over toward the end of the chapter. So here comes Larson. The full benefit of such rapprochement between science and religion will not be realized, however, unless there is some softening of the rigid attitudes that have prevailed on both sides. It will be necessary for the scientists to refrain from opposing religious or other non-scientific ideas simply because they do not fit neatly into the scientific framework as it happens to stand at the moment. An attitude that has been taken all too often with respect to matters that are outside the field that science is currently cultivating. The ESP phenomena, for instance. Fortunately, there is a growing awareness among scientists that the existing limits of scientific knowledge are not the boundaries of knowledge in general. The following recent statements on the subject illustrate the new scientific position. A philosophy, here's a quote from Margenau, a philosophy which sees the answers to all questions clearly implied in what is now called science is presumptuous and contrary to the spirit of science. Indeed, I would say, scientists have a lot of overconfidence in their thinking that what they've discovered so far is all there is to discover. I believe that the head of the U.S. Patent Office once wrote in 1899 that everything that needs to be discovered already has been discovered. And so he probably would have gasped had he lived through the 20th century. Anyway, getting back to Larson, now he's quoting Werner Heisenberg, the existing scientific concepts cover always only a very limited part of reality, and the other part that has not been understood is infinite. And this goes to one of my jazz musicians' heroes. He always told he was a band leader, Sun Ra, and he always told his musicians to, to don't play what you do know, play what you don't know, because what you don't know is infinite. And the more you know, the more you don't know. And you know that you don't know it. Okay, back to Larson. The more realistic viewpoint that is reflected in these statements by Margenau and Heisenberg is an encouraging indication that enlightened scientific opinion is moving in this direction. What is needed is an open-minded and sympathetic appraisal of each of the assertions of the various religions, not in the light of existing scientific knowledge alone, but in the light of this knowledge plus careful reasoning with respect to what may lie beyond that which science has thus far established. The sincere scientists certainly cannot be expected to accept assertions that are in conflict with well-established facts. And if a religious organization insists on acceptance of such doctrines as a condition of membership, he will have to forego that privilege. However, where the conflict is not with established fact, but with interpretations or extrapolations of those facts, with inferences drawn from them, or with unconfirmed theories or hypotheses, he should bear in mind that a careful scientific investigation has now demonstrated that religion has its own processes of ascertaining the truth. And while the nature of these processes is such that a great deal of error is inevitably mixed with the truth, it is neither logical nor scientific to assume that all non-scientific conclusions are erroneous. Where a religious assertion is neither demonstrably true nor demonstrably false, the proper course is to analyze the situation and arrive at a decision as to whether there is sufficient justification for accepting that assertion tentatively, pending further clarification. On the other side of the picture, the most serious religious obstacle to harmonious relations with science and scientists is the tendency on the part of the religious organizations to regard their doctrine as fixed and not subject to change, something that was handed down to the founder of the religion in complete form and must persist in that form for all time. Adherence to this dogma in practice is, of course, impossible. The world moves on, and even religion must move with it or be left behind. But the ecclesiastical authorities continue to proclaim the timelessness of their doctrines in public, while behind the scenes they are doing what everyone else must do. They are continually discussing, debating, and making changes. That which was a sin yesterday is perfectly proper today, while that which was an important religious duty yesterday, persecution of the heretics, for example, is today regarded as contrary to religious ideals. Perhaps the unyielding attitude of the religious leaders may have some merit where they are dealing with an uneducated and superstitious people, but it alienates those who are able to think for themselves. Quoting Denouille, the intransigence of religious authority tends to prejudice an independent mind in favor of positive materialistic rationalism. Back to Larson. It is possible that the religious authorities have no real choice in the matter, as it may well be that the great majority of the adherents of the major religions are still not emotionally prepared to accept the modifications of religious doctrine that are necessary to keep religion abreast of the advance of human knowledge. It may be necessary for the present to continue talking in terms of posthumous reward and punishment, for instance, simply because this is the only good hold that the religious organizations have on some segments of their membership. But if this is true, there should at least be some branches of some religions which can meet the scientist's desire for a logical and rational religious viewpoint. One of the essential requirements in this respect is a recognition of the fact that religion, like science, is a growing body of knowledge. Even if the revelation received by the founder of one of the major religions was correct in every detail, there are many reasons why the body of doctrine based on that revelation is not, as it now stands, adequate to serve as a continuing basis of religious thought and practice. In the first place, we do not know just what the revelation actually contained, since little or nothing comes to us firsthand. In many cases, the holy books of the religious organizations purport to give the founder's words, but we have only someone else's testimony that these were his words. And since a long interval usually elapsed between the spoken word and the written record, it is inevitable that many statements were incorrectly reported. Thus, or then, even if we assume that we have the correct wording of a particular statement, there is always a question as to just what these words mean. As pointed out earlier, each culture has its own manner of expression, and a literal interpretation of the words of a people far removed from us in time and in environment can be utterly misleading. Nor is this exclusively a phenomenon of the past. Anyone who attempts to interpret the idiomatic or colloquial language of the present day literally according to the wording would go just as far astray as those who insist on a similar literal interpretation of the allegory and imagery habitual with the population of earlier eras. The person who puts his foot in his mouth is not a contortionist. One of the important tasks of the religious community is to discover and correct the errors that have distorted the meaning of some features of the original revelations. Beyond this, it should be recognized that however accurate the original revelation may have been, its scope was limited by the general level of knowledge at the time it was received. Only a relatively modest level of understanding needs to be reached in order to grasp the simple basic rules of ethical living. And it is not unlikely that the widespread attainment of such a level was the factor that resulted in the appearance of most of the great religions of the world within a period of time that was extremely short, not only in comparison to the millions of years or more of human existence, but also compared to the very much shorter period of recorded history. These simple truths are not adequate, however, to meet the more complex situations of the present day. And the attempts of the ecclesiastics to deny this fact are the root cause of much of the decline in religious influence that is now taking place at an accelerating rate. The revelations on which the modern religions are based are remarkable products, but they are never infallible nor adequate. They provide good foundations on which to build, but the growing complexities of human existence call for purging the organized religions of the elements that thoughtful persons cannot accept, and for an advance in religious understanding comparable to that which is now underway in other fields, particularly in science. The findings of this work will not only provide guidelines for the purging operation, but will furnish solid factual support for the sound portions of religious doctrine that remain intact, a support that should reinforce the faith in the basic assertions of religion that has been wavering in recent years. The positive verification of the reality of metaphysical existence in the preceding pages and the clarification of the important role that this non-physical existence plays in human life now constitutes a solid base from which it will be possible to make significant advances in religious knowledge, advances that will fulfill the prediction made by J.B. Rhine in this statement. Now, Rhine is the guy that runs the Rhine Institute at Duke University for psychic experimentation. And his quote is, "If some kind of a world of independent spirit agency can be discovered, as there is reason to think that may be possible, its establishment would manifestly bring to religious life an incomparably greater meaning and potency. The discovery would do for religion something like what the germ theory did for medicine." Maybe not a good example, but to continue. "It would open the range of religious exploration to horizons beyond all present conceptions. It has always been so when new areas are discovered." And that is the end of chapter 23. Chapter 24 starts, it's called East and West, and we will get into that starting tomorrow. I just wanted to say that I agree with a lot of what Larson is saying there. I was red-pilled way back in the early 90s, and my dad went to seminary school, and that turned him into a complete atheist. So I grew up pretty much without religion in my life, and I'm sympathetic to the spiritual and the religious, but when I pick up the Bible and I start reading it, I'm like, I'm red-pilled. Do you expect me to believe this? Where did this come from? What is the origin? It's just sitting right in front of me, and Christians are saying, "Oh, it's the Word of God." That's not what it is. It's a book that's in front of me. I need better clarification. Okay, have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.